Hey everybody, it's Andrea Paquette, president and co-founder of the Stigma-Free Society. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and we also have an amazing guest with us for our live events for the Stigma-Free Society. So I just want to welcome you, Teri. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Andrea. I'm doing pretty good. Getting started here in my morning in BC.
Nice. And you're in Vancouver, right?
I am. Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Really nice. And so thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you today about your journey, about the work you do, and the impact you have in the community. But first, I'm going to share a little bit about the Stigma Free Society. So if you would like to visit our website for anybody watching, stigmafreesociety.com. And Stigma Free Society provides education with a focus on youth and the rural communities as well across Canada. And it is education about stigma with a focus on mental health with our toolkits. And everything we do comes from that stigma free lens. So it is a charity that I originally founded and then co founded in 2016 with Dave Richardson, renamed from Bipolar Society to the Stigma Free Society. So I want to jump right into this interview because I'm very excited today. The Stigma Free Society has been working with Teri in her capacity at Rick Hansen Foundation. And first and foremost, Teri, I'm going to share a little bit of a bio about you. So does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, perfect. So Teri Thorson, is that correct how I said your name?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
wow. I'm pretty good at that usually. I'm pretty impressed with myself. Okay. So Teri began her career in a software company as the manager of a technical team and quality assurance. After sustaining a spinal cord injury, she started her own company, designing clothing for women that are seated. She became an advocate for inclusion and accessibility, which led to her being a Rick Hansen Foundation school program ambassador and now the manager of outreach and program operations, which is how we met Teri through the Stigma Free Society and our partnerships. She believes that everyone can be difference makers for creating a world where everyone can go everywhere. I like that. Teri is also a mom of a 12-year-old boy, a wheelchair rugby coach. I didn't know that about you. And a former Paralympian in wheelchair athletics. Wow, that is quite the bio. So I
Yeah.
want to jump right in and learn more about you. So I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself that perhaps we haven't covered in the bio, and a little bit about your personal journey? Because, yeah, it's inspiring. And I'd really love for our viewers to know more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's probably a whole lot in there that is not in my bio. But to let you know a little bit about my injury to start out with, while I was the manager of the technical team, I had an opportunity to travel to Australia, and I was 24 years old. And I went to go visit my first international vacation ever. And I was a passenger in a car, and we hit an unmarked hairpin turn on a gravel road, traveling in sort of the outback farmland of Perth, Australia, well, outside of Perth. And the car flipped, and I was not wearing my seatbelt, and I was obviously ejected from the vehicle, and I became what is called a tetraplegic. So I dislocated my neck at a 90-degree level, which then created a spinal cord injury. And so for my injury, I don't have any feeling, sensation, mobility below sort of chest level down. And also my hands are affected, so my hands don't work as well. I do have pretty strong arms, so I do have that, but yes, no sensation or mobility from about here down. So I use a wheelchair to get around. And obviously there was a lot in that. Before my injury, I was a model. I did a lot of fashion shows. I was a dancer, as well as the manager of the software company. And I would say that now, I mean, I still do modeling, although, I'm quite a bit older. I'm involved in adaptive fashion, as mentioned before. I actually I went to the Paralympics in Athens, where I competed in the 400 meter. And then when I retired from athletics, I moved into wheelchair rugby. So competed at a provincial level for wheelchair rugby. And now that I'm retired from that, I'm doing some coaching. And yes, I'm a mom. I have three sisters and a brother, so big family. Grew up here in Vancouver. I love food and I love wine, and I always am up for open to trying new things. So I think that probably my injury didn't change me as a person, but I really felt that it did when I thought that Teri that I was before was dead, and now I was this new Teri. And I've come to realize that that really isn't true. And now I just kind of have to do things a little bit differently, but I'm really that same person. I just, I'm living with a disability now and need things adapted, but I still love all those things that I did before too.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing all of that. When did that happen? How many years ago?
Well, that was 26 years ago, because I'm turning the big 50 this year.
Wow. I'm right behind you.
Scary.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I don't know, I always feel with getting older too, it's a privilege. It's a lovely thing that we can get older and enjoy life, right? And I love to see that you're enjoying life and you're so positive. And obviously this injury, like, took you in so many different directions afterwards. And I'm glad that you were able to find your inspiration inside of yourself to move forward. And that takes a lot of strength. And I really admire you. And I know you mentioned clothing business for women who are seated. And I was wondering if you could tell me about that. I would love to hear the genesis and the work that went into that and why. Like what was it that really inspired you to do that?
Yeah, well, really it was, I am 5'11", and I've always really, as I was a fashion model before, I never owned a pair of running shoes in my whole entire life. I never owned a pair of track pants. I loved fashion. I loved high-heeled shoes and mini skirts and dressing up, and image was very important to me before my injury. And so once I became in a wheelchair, I had a really hard time finding clothes because I was also like quite slender. And so they just didn't make clothing with a 39-inch inseam, because when you're sitting, you can imagine that, your pants ride up a little bit, right? So, if I went to, the tall shop, they didn't fit me being so skinny. So it was really at a personal need. I looked everywhere for adaptive clothing that was fashionable. That was the biggest thing. They do make a lot of things, but maybe it's for, people that might be a little bit older. I was 24 years old, right? I, still wanted to dress the same way as I wanted to. And when I was in rehab, I was told that, well, it's going to be track pants and runners for you. And, I never wore that before. So why would I do it now, right? So that's kind of what inspired me. But it's a hard business. It's a small market, obviously. And so I started designing this line of clothing. And, it wasn't really ever meant to be a job. It was because it was a need that I found that needed in the community. And I'm still doing it now to this day, and working with another designer. And we're kind of redoing the patterns and making it trying to make it a little bit more available for people who use wheelchairs to get around.
How do people purchase these clothing? Like how's the process work? Do you have a storefront, or is it online, or is it through?
No, it's going to be, we'll see. So right now, it's kind of part of a research study. We received a grant for putting together an adaptive guide. So we're just in the very beginning stages of this. My clothes, I have my own website at like terithorson.com, so you can ask for, pictures and things like that. And I'm working with another fashion designer who, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with it, because she's not gonna sell it out of her business. Mm-hmm. But Chloe Angus, you might have heard from her. She's a local Vancouver designer, and also has a spinal cord injury herself. So yeah, so we're just kind of collaborating and looking at maybe, taking it to bigger companies and saying, hey, out of goodwill, could you put this pattern into your line of clothing that you're already doing, and offer it sort of as a free of charge? Or maybe it's going to be on a website for people to download, an open source website for people to download the patterns, and so they could take it to their own tailor or seamstress. So, we're not sure yet, but you can always reach me at my website.
That's that inclusivity piece, right? When people are shopping online for clothes or going into stores, why not have that option? So that's very innovative and very cool. I really like that a lot. So now you're with the Rick Hansen Foundation, and I was curious, how did that come about? Like, how long have you been there? And maybe tell me about a little bit about what you do and what you did in programs and what you do now in operations.
Yeah, sure. So, I have always talked about my story, and the Rick Hansen Foundation, through their ambassador presentations. I think I got connected with them about 20 years ago. And when they asked me to become an ambassador, and as a person with lived experience, we go to schools and speak about our own experience and inclusion and accessibility, which are all obviously very important. So that's kind of how I first got connected. And then I've been kind of in and out of the organization for a number of years, doing different things. And so I just kind of took on this more full-time role about a year ago, I guess. And I've done a few contracts with them over the years. So now what I do is I run the ambassador presentation program, and I'm also doing outreach. So that's how you and I met originally, was part of my my outreach that I was doing. And I reached out to youth organizations all over Canada. And, we're just trying to create collaborations where, we can share each other's resources and information, and just start this larger conversation about inclusion and accessibility, because, there's so many crossovers, right? So I think, with what you guys are doing with mental health and what we're doing with, we focus on 3 disabilities, which is mobility, vision, and hearing. But there's just a lot that's, that we are very similar discussions that we're all having. So we might as well work together.
Yeah, definitely. Tell me about some of the programs that the organization offers.
Yeah, well, the Rick Hansen Foundation team has actually been around for over 3 decades now. And so they've always really worked at raising awareness, changing attitudes, breaking down barriers for people with disabilities with our programs. And so our programs, we have accessibility programs. So there's rating and certification of sort of the built environment, and professional training around that as well. And then we have accessible advisory services. So if a building or a township or a city wanted to have some advice on accessibility in the built environment, then they can go to that team. And then we also have our awareness programs, which is where the school program comes in, where we have a resource library on our website, which is no charge and completely downloadable for all schools K to 12 on various different aspects of inclusion and accessibility. And as well as we offer the ambassador presentations, which, as I mentioned earlier, are a person with a lived experience. We're doing everything completely virtual now, as most people still are. Yeah, and it's all a national program. So, and we're specifically look at each province's curriculum and try to align our resources to that.
Amazing. Yeah, there is a lot of overlap in what we do for sure. And bringing the stigma-free message, that is exactly what you're doing. It's amazing to be working together. There's definitely a lot of overlap and synergies. So what does it mean to you to be an accessibility and inclusion advocate?
Well, I think really, as a person with a disability, we're always advocating for our needs, right? It doesn't feel like I feel as an individual, I've been doing this as soon as I became in a chair, like just, what works for me, getting into buildings, fashion, being part of these conversations. And I have always been sort of fighting for, I don't feel like I should have to fight to be able to get into a library or into the hospital or have to always bring a family member with me. I mean, it's just, so that's kind of, I guess, how I started. What does it mean? What I'd like it to mean is that we can all be advocates for inclusion and accessibility. And that just means that everybody, well, goes back to the world of everyone can go everywhere, right? So it's our built environment, attitudes, so the physical and attitudinal barriers are removed so that we can all do the same things and be included in everything from school to, your community.
Yeah. How do people get involved if they want to become an advocate and to do more? Is there anything you can suggest how people can become active in doing this kind of work that you're doing when you're advocating for people?
Yeah, I think that, I would just look around your community and what do you feel passionate about? If you feel passionate about, inclusion and accessibility, then, you can start by, going to the Rick Hansen website and find out more information there. If you want to get more into politics, you could look into your local community and, who is your representative there and see if it's, social change, climate change, something like that. That's how I would get started. Look at different organizations, look at Stigma-Free organization and find out how they're doing and have conversations with people. How can we get started? How can we start building in my community a group? Because I think it's really hard as an individual, and that's why there are organizations out there to be able to, help. And you could maybe join that, or you can start your own and just start talking to people, finding out what the need is.
Yeah, oh, definitely. No, that's really good because I know a lot of people are passionate about getting involved and just don't know where to begin. Start with your local charities, right? And people who are already involved in that cause, and there's always room for people to volunteer and get active. So no, I like those suggestions for sure. I was wondering about accessibility and inclusion, say in different environments. So say there's a lot of work being done, presentations and such by your organization and our organization at schools. So as an example, I know you mentioned the library and being able to enter the library, but say if you're in a school and you want to enhance the accessibility and inclusion, what could that look like, or what could people do in that environment?
Well, I mean, I guess it's a pretty broad question because everywhere is a little bit different. So, I mean, the biggest thing is obviously having, access, like ramps instead of stairs, elevators. But there's a huge piece around the attitudinal barriers. And I think, especially in schools, it's really important to know that students with disabilities can still do everything that their able-bodied counterparts can also do. And so it's just a matter of, being prepared and knowing how to adapt each activity to suit them. And it's not a one size fits all, right? It's very individual, because we're all different, as everybody is. I mean, it's hard in schools because I know, teachers have a large group of students that they're working with in their classroom, and they can't always provide individual attention to each student. But I think it's important in the preparation of a class to do that first before the students arrive. So that would be kind of my part. What I would think is that just in finding out more information, how can we support, and how can we make sure that everyone is treated the same.
Yeah, and I guess that applies to workspaces too, right? Like environments and the attitudes and perceptions that we have in being accepting. I know, like I have, as an example, bipolar disorder. And when I missed 6 months of work way back when I worked for the government, I noticed there was this discomfort when I came back, because people don't want to talk about the challenges people have, or their disabilities, or things that are affecting them to miss work, and it's like, I think we need to really cultivate that stigma-free attitude, right? And there's like, what do you think about that whole idea around diverse ability versus disability? I've heard diverse ability focuses on the abilities, but do you find the word disability to be stigmatizing, or how do you see the language there?
Yeah, for me, I don't have a problem with either. I have more of a problem with like handicapped, or or crippled. But disability or diverse ability, neither. I don't really have an opinion either way. I'm fine with being called a disabled person. I think language is just a very personalized thing. And I'm kind of starting to learn how to embrace my disability more. And I think for people maybe who do that are more okay with being called disabled, or using that sort of identity first language versus, for myself, I think I felt like I lost my sexuality when I became in a wheelchair, and mostly because it's a very, like, spinal cord injury. It's mostly men who are spinal cord injured, so there's very few women. And so when I was in the hospital, there was 2 women out of 35, right? So you just became your disability. So I fought to just be a woman first, right? And now I'm kind of like, well, maybe it's, I mean, I'm still a woman, right? And I still want to be considered a woman first, but I think my second identity would be disabled, right?
Yeah. No, I think when you embrace it, like, there's a peace in that. I know when I have bipolar disorder, and it's so funny because when I first 17 years ago would say those words out of my mouth, like, I always felt such shame, or there's just some discomfort in it. And now it's just like saying, hey, how's it going? Like, it has that much impact. So yeah, I completely understand what you mean. So I wanted to just say that I am very inspired by you. I feel like your story has so much impact and influence in the world. I really want to get this interview out there in a really big way. And you went through a lot of struggles. Like there's probably moments when you just wanted to give up. Was there?
Oh, for sure. And I'm not gonna lie, I still have moments like,
Yeah.
for me to get ready for work in the morning. I mean, thankfully, I work remotely, and it, for COVID did a lot of really great things for the disabled community as far as employment, right? And being able to do everything from your home, because it takes me 2 to 3 hours just to get ready in the morning. No one wants to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to be able to go to work and then come home and you're just exhausted. Like, everything takes so much longer. And
Wow.
it's so frustrating sometimes. And if something happens in there, something goes wrong, you slip and fall on the floor, or,
Mhm.
that just, is a total game changer, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So, I have frustrating moments every day, but for myself, I've always looked at it as a choice for me. I could have made the choice to stay in bed all day, and I bet you probably a lot of people would say, I don't blame you, like, because your life is really hard. I mean, where I live is pretty accessible, but not everywhere you go can you get in places. And there's, that literally the me at the bottom of the stairs looking up going, oh, great, I just made a reservation at this restaurant and now I can't even get in. And,
Yeah.
it's super frustrating. But yeah, for me, it's always like a choice of how I want to be in the world. And every day maybe can look a little bit different. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. It must be hard on your mental health too, right? Like, do you find your mental health can be quite affected?
Yeah, I'm so lucky to have such a great support system, and I always have, and I'm a very, like, open person and honest. But yeah, it goes up and down, especially early on in the beginning. There's quite a lot of, like, as I mentioned, I was very focused on my image, and, I had said that, that Teri died, right? And so I wasn't comfortable in my new body. I felt really, like I can't be a model. I can't dance anymore. I can't do any of these things. What am I going to do? What's my life going to look like? So there was a lot of depression earlier on, a
Yeah.
lot of loss and grief and loss that I went through. And it eases out over time when you start surrounding yourself with a new community and people that support you, and finding organizations that you can get your story out, which is why I became an ambassador in the first place. It's just getting my story out. The more I get my story out, I'm sure you find this too, Andrea, right? The more you talk about it, the more healing it
Yes.
becomes, right?
Yes, definitely. I feel like even to this day, 17 years later, it's like this little piece of my heart back every time I say, like, yeah, because there was so much pain, and I didn't myself, like, almost didn't get through, kind of thing. And so it is healing. It's healing to share, because in sharing our personal stories like yours, you're going to bring healing to other people, inspiration, and a hope that things get better.
That's
You
right.
know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you can just touch that one person, right? Like, it's just so
Yes.
much more meaningful. It makes it that much more. I mean, not only does it help us to be able to continue to talk about it, but when you find out the people that you've touched along the years, then it becomes that much more impactful.
Oh yes, definitely. It's wonderful when you hear the feedback, right? People say, "Oh, you've given me hope," or, "I got out of bed that day because I read that article that you were in," or, kind of thing. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So thanks for sharing your story. But yeah, there's been a lot of challenges in your lives. There's been a lot of triumphs, and I was wondering if there was somebody that was going to watch this interview now or later, and is there any words you can share with them to encourage them if they're going through struggles?
So I would say, if you can, just find people that have gone through the same experience as you. Peer support, I think, is really important. You want to talk to other people. You want to learn more, educate yourself. I think even if you're not going through the struggles, everybody needs to become aware and learn, and so we can all be advocates for ourselves and for each other. I think that so if you don't know where to go, then reach out to your community organization, and find out, how can I become more educated on this? Is there someone that I can talk to? Are there people, so you don't feel alone, right? I mean, every time it's amazing. Every time you start talking, you find more and more people who've experienced, even if it's just the same feeling as you, if it's not the same physical, limitations that I might have, but it's the same feelings, right? And we can share them.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Teri. I really enjoyed our chat today. Please stay on after the broadcast. I'd like to thank you personally before you go. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And if you're watching this after the fact, thank you so much as well. Everyone, please feel free to share, to bring some inspiration into other people's lives who are struggling, facing disabilities, really need some guidance on what to do and where to go. So thank you so much, Teri. And please, everyone, check out stigmafreesociety.com and reach out to us at any point, because we are here for you. And so is the Rick Hansen Foundation. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everybody.